What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today, and the road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams this summer is now going to take us into Pullman, Washington, where the Washington State Cougars are on tap for predictions. And as they prepare to dive into the new era Pac-12 in a year's time, they are worried about trying to replace everything they lost from a year ago. My name is Nate Bope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate, and I want to thank y'all so much for clicking on this video and for helping to support the channel. If you would like to support the channel even further, then please do what it says right below me. Hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, you might as well ring the bell, because turning on notifications will ensure you don't miss an upload during prediction season, especially not one of your favorite team. I'm a graduate of the sports media industry, diving on into the professional world. And if you want to see all the cool stuff I get to do while still being up to date on what goes on this very YouTube channel, then you can give me a follow at TailgateNate29 on Twitter or X, whatever your preference for the platform, and Instagram. You can even email me at tailgatenate29@gmail.com. Thank y'all so much for supporting, interacting, and doing anything else with me or the channel in whatever way you may be doing so. All that said and done and out of the way, it's time to talk about Wazoo. The Washington State Cougars are going to be led by a new head coach this season after Jake Dicker is going to go take the Wake Forest route. Went to the Demon Deacons 2 days after Dave Clawson announced his step down from the program, and bam, enter Jimmy Rogers. Has won 2 national championships with South Dakota State, the latter one as a head coach in 2024, where the team went undefeated. Last year helped the Jackrabbits make a run to the FCS semifinal. A guy that has been with one of FCS's most historic programs since 2013 is going to hope to try to implement his system, rebuild this roster, and find success in Pullman. We are going to dive on in to the roster preview first. We are going to go with the offense over here on the left, the defense over here on the right. And after all that, we're going to go ahead and take a deep dive into the Washington State football schedule. I will give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. And this video overall is here to tell you what I think about the Washington State Cougars here in 2025. Before we do get started, bam, right on down here. Returning production numbers are according to ESPN, and they do factor in transfer portal additions up to a certain percentage, even though it's not really going to be super favorable in this game, because that's just how much production Washington State does lose from last season. But we're going to dive into that in this video. Recruiting and transfer portal class ranks are both according to 24/7 Sports. And I do think your transfer portal class rank is a little misleading, but I'll talk about why here in a second. Let's dive on into this offense and talk about Danny Freon's offensive group. And you know you're losing a stud when John Mateer leaves this quarterback room. He was amazing after emerging onto the scene last year. 3,139 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on 64.5% completion percentage. But what's better, he led the team in rushing, 826 yards and 15 rushing touchdowns, which was more than triple what anyone else had on the team. He had over half of the Washington State rushing touchdowns last year, and was a massive reason why the offense was so successful last season. So what do you do to try to fill in the gaps of John Mateer? Well, Zevi Eckhouse is a guy that is coming back and, look, has a lot of very good starting experience with other programs. Zevi Eckhouse was a starter over at Bryant at the FCS level, with his best season probably coming in 2023. Had 2,907 yards, 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on 62.8% completion percentage. Also rushed for 353 yards on 4.5 yards per carry. Sack yardage is included in that number. He's posted some better touchdown interception ratios, some increase in yard production over his 3-year career there with the Bryant Bulldogs from 2021 to 2023. Transferred over here to Washington State, just got beat out by a guy who is now going to be playing football in the SEC. Not much you can do about that, but as long as Eckhouse can transition that fully into a starting role here with Washington State, I think you're going to find a very, very successful marriage at the quarterback position. Last season, during the time he did get to play, through 50 passes, completed 37 of them. That's a 74% completion percentage for 424 yards, 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He showed a lot of good signs last year, and I think he's ready for that full-time starting role. In my opinion, it is his to lose. We've already established that John Mateer was the leading rusher last year, but your lead tailback from last season in Wayshawn Parker is now in Salt Lake City with the Utah Utes. However, joining Leo Pulalasi, who was the team's second leading running back last season in terms of rushing yards, you are going to get 2 South Dakota State transfers. You are going to be getting Angel Johnson, who had 646 yards and 3 touchdowns on 7.1 yards per carry. It gets better. Even though the yardage doesn't get better, one certain stat does. You are also getting the team's third leading rusher out of South Dakota State last year in Kirby Voorhees. By the way, Angel Johnson was second. 581 yards and 8 touchdowns for Voorhees on 7.7 yards per carry there. So you're getting 2 guys that were absolutely dynamic with a Jackrabbit program that clicked on all cylinders all the time offensively. And you're taking a look at what Washington State has got with Leo Pulalasi there. That's a tailback room that can at least go 3 deep. Now, the pass catching room, well, you're going to need to give Zevi Eckhouse some weapons that are going to emerge this season because you do lose a lot of production out of the wide receiver room. And most notably is a guy by the name of Kyle Williams, 1,198 yards and 14 receiving touchdowns. That is more than double anyone else had on the team last season with a team high 70 catches. You are also losing your second lead option in Chris Hudson, 54 catches, 683 yards, and a pair of touchdowns for him last season, along with your top tight end in Cooper Mathers, who was the 5th leading receiver and second on the team with 6 receiving touchdowns last year. Among other pieces, you're going to need to find guys to try to fill in those gaps. You do have some solid returning pieces, such as Josh Meredith, who had 472 yards and a pair of touchdowns last season. You do have some other pretty nice depth pieces that are going to be coming back, but a couple of the transfers here, especially entering this wide receiver room, I want to give some love. Jeremiah Noga, pretty solid piece with the Oregon State Beavers last season, 266 yards receiving. He's going to be transferring over here to Pullman up from Corvallis. And then you were also getting Devin Ellison, who did formerly play Division I football at the FCS level at Southern, and then is now from the more community college, junior college realm when he transfers over from Monterey Peninsula College. Don't ask me where that is. I wouldn't be able to tell you. You're also going to be getting some transfers in the tight end room. This guy specifically coming over from Michigan State. I will butcher this name, so I apologize, but Ademola Falaye. I know I butchered that name, but he's slotting in here to theoretically be this starting tight end. You do have Trey Lechner and Andre Dollar who are some returners. According to ourlads.com, though, it is going to be Falaye, who is going to be that starting tight end. And again, I know I butchered that name. I apologize profusely. When you take a look at the offensive line room, 2 starters are coming back to anchor this offensive line that's going to see a semi-new look. You do have a lot of returning pieces from last season that were either backups or third stringers, more than likely backups, that are now going to be slotting into their new roles. You do have a few transfers here, most notably an AJ Viapulu. Again, I probably butchered that last name, so I apologize again. He'll slot in at the right guard position, while everyone else, according to ourlads.com, is as far as projected starters go, are returners from last season. Maybe not necessarily starters, but could have seen some solid playing time. Zevi Eckhouse, as long as he can fully translate everything he did at Bryant, and again, when he showed a lot of good things last year, he continues that in Pullman this year. I'm not worried about this running back room. I think you're going to be great. I think you did well in the transfer portals. In the transfer portal realm, I think I would be a little concerned about the pass catching depth, but I think as time goes on, it could find that it proves itself this upcoming season. Bam, defensive side. Jesse Bobbitt is your defensive coordinator, and major improvement is majorly necessary for a defense that struggled in pretty much every facet last season. It did not generate a ton of pressure. It did not really have that stellar of a front seven of a back end. In fact, it allowed nearly 450 yards per game. If I'm getting that number right off the top of my head, I might be just a little bit off, but it allowed nearly as much as the offense was able to gain. Now, the offense was humming for Washington State last season. It was gaining yards left, right, and center. When you're a defense that gives up as much as you gain, there definitely is some room for improvement. However, Jimmy Rogers, with his defensive background, going to look to try to turn this thing around quickly, again, with Jesse Bobbitt as his defensive coordinator. Even though the team did not generate a ton of pressure last season, they still got 24 sacks. Well, 10 of those are going to be gone between these two guys, and Ansel Din Emba, who I believe has entered the transfer portal, and Khalil Laufau. I checked to make sure I had that pronunciation right, and I got it. See, trusting your instincts pays off sometimes. Along with a lot of depth pieces, they are all going to be leaving this room, and it calls for a pretty big hit to this defensive line unit. Transfers are plentiful in the defensive front. They are mainly going to end up playing second string roles, according to ourlads.com, although it would not surprise me to see some of these guys very quickly get into a starting role, if not get there by the end of the season. But you do still have some solid returning pieces, don't get me wrong. I realized there that my sentence right here did not make any sense, so I just went ahead and corrected it. Returners are plentiful, but again, transfers are going to make up the bulk of this depth. Here are some of the returners that do come back. Stevenson, Bryson Lamb, so Ram Stevenson, Bryson Lamb, Isaac Terrell. And then again, a bulk of transfers are going to be entering this room to act sort of as those depth pieces. What's more, when you take a look at the linebacking unit, well, your top two linebackers from a season ago are no longer here. They just so happen to be your top two leading tacklers. Tariq Al-Ukda has entered the transfer portal. He is with a new program after picking off 3 passes and recovering 4 fumbles last season. Massive piece that has gone, as well as being the leading tackler on this team. You are also going to be losing Kyle Thornton out of this linebacking unit. So Parker McKenna and Keith Brown, 2 returners from last season that should be your starting 1-2 punch at the Mike and Will positions in the linebacking unit. They're going to be joined by a ton of transfers that, much like the defensive line, is going to serve as those depth pieces. Now, when you look at this secondary, shredded. There is not a lot of really great top end production that's going to be returning to this team, because your top 7 tackling secondary members are all exiting this program. You do have a lot of experienced transfers that are going to be entering this unit for reinforcements. Jamari Colson did get the first name wrong. Jamari Colson is a returner that's going to slot into the cornerback position, but you do again get just a ton of transfers coming into the room. Colby Humphrey, Matt Durant, Tucker Large are all projected starters in the secondary. You also sort of have a sort of linebacker defensive back combination position. So you could slot this guy wherever, but also from South Dakota State, Caleb Frankel, however you pronounce the last name, it's Francl. He's going to be transferring into the program, also familiar with this Jimmy Rogers system. And hey, the special teams unit, they're going to be new as well, because we got to show love to the kickers. They are people too. Again, I already told you, pretty comfortable with this offense as long as the pass catching room can develop. Defensively, though, there's got to be a lot of change. And I'm very confident to maybe not get a ton better right away. Like, I don't know if they're going to already get to allowing only 350 yards per game after doing almost 100 yards more than that this year. I think you're going to see some steady improvements this season. I think you're going to see a lot of things get better. But overall, a ton of pieces need to fit in, and a ton of things need to fit well. It could be difficult for Rodgers to implement his system in his first year, but can Washington State take all the talent they have and use it to navigate A schedule that is definitely not without its landmines, because here is the 2025 Washington State football schedule. But before we do dive on into this, right down below me are some odds courtesy of the people at FanDuel. Not me telling you to go place your money. Of course, they are current as of recording this video. Just odds to tell you how good the odds makers think Washington State's going to be this upcoming season. I am not going to look at their odds to win the conference because they don't play a Pac-12 conference championship game. It's just them and Oregon State. For the same reason, I am not going to be putting a conference record when I go through the full prediction, even though you technically can. I just prefer not to do it. So we are not also going to look at their odds to win the national championship, because when I looked at them and Oregon State's odds, they both have the highest odds that you can get on FanDuel, which is 100,000. So instead, I looked at their odds to win, or not win, get in to the college football playoff. That is plus 10,000. So odds makers telling you there's going to be a lot that has to go right for Washington State to even crack the college football playoff, with the over-under win total sitting at 5.5. So a little skepticism as far as the bowl game eligibility here. I do think they're going to be able to win their first two games of the season at home against Idaho. Now you got to watch out for the Vandals, a team that always has a lot of good talent at the FCS level. They've been one of the better teams in that realm of Division I football for quite some time now, especially in the past couple of seasons, and they gave Oregon a scare last year. Now, I know that's when Oregon wasn't really playing well at the beginning of the season. I would still watch out for this Vandal team, and you especially would have to watch out if it was in the Kibby Dome, which thankfully it's not. It's in Pullman, and I do think Washington State, while they may have some troubles, I think they're going to take care of business here pretty swiftly. I also think the same against this San Diego State team. I did have a lot of faith in Sean Lewis coming in to this program when he first got there, but that faith is slowly starting to diminish and diminish. San Diego State has really got to pick it up this season. They're bringing in a ton of transfers to try to fix it again this year. I just don't know if it's all going to work out. Again, San Diego State is really getting really skeptical for me. Hopefully they can turn it around this year. Even if they do, it won't be enough to get past the Washington State Cougars. Here is a fun one to go here and talk about. You got to go on the road and play the North Texas Mean Green, a team that, guys, I got to tell you, I'm pretty darn high on. I do like a lot of the pieces that Eric Morris has with this North Texas team. You are going to have Reese Poffenbarger, who's going to be transferring into the quarterback room. It's going to be one of the more fun names to say in college football this season. Some good, but really young wide receiver pieces. Again, really young, but really good wide receiver pieces. Love what they did in the transfer portal on the defensive side. You're going to be bringing in a ton of defensive transfers to be starters for you this season. And I think North Texas, again, very well coached by Morris. I like what he does as a head coach, and they are going to be very, very difficult, I think, to beat this season. However, I think Washington State has enough pieces to do it. These are both programs that I feel like, again, have got to see a lot of pieces fit. Even though North Texas doesn't have as many transfers, they do have a lot of young guys that are going to be playing some big roles for them this season, especially with Zevi Eckhouse. If he can form chemistry early with the wide receivers, I would have a lot more confidence here going on the road against North Texas. Again, I think Eckhouse has all the talent in the world. I think he can be a really good quarterback here at Pullman. I think North Texas is going to push Wazoo in this game, but I do think the Cougars prevail in the end. So that is going to be a win for the that's going to be a win for the Washington State Cougars over the North Texas Mean Green. I'd watch out for that one. That one could be tricky. You get a home game here against the Washington Huskies, and Washington is the team that I think is going to take a massive leap in the Big Ten Conference this season, or has the potential to. If you see my video, I got them hovering right around the 7-5 rank, although I think 8-4 is very achievable. I think 9-3 is very achievable for this team. You got some dogs on both sides of the football. Demon Williams at the quarterback position and Jonah Coleman at the running back position are really going to make this offense, and their wide receiver room is a great complement of pass catching options there for Williams to be able to throw to. You do get a ton of really, really beneficial transfers coming in. One of them happens to be a former Washington State Cougar in Tariq Al-Uqda. Again, the linebacker that was pretty stout for him last season. He is now a Washington Husky. I think he'll be motivated to beat his former team, even though this one is in Pullman. Who I would watch out for it though. Washington, I do think, is going to come into this building and beat the Washington State Cougars in the Apple Cup. I do really like this Washington team offensively, defensively. I think they're a little bit more talented than what Washington State has got on their side. On the road against Colorado State is another interesting one because Colorado State's got this quarterback by the name of Braden Fowler Nicolosi. And even though he is no longer going to have Torrey Horton to throw passes to, he's still got his good group of guys there. I think some other solid pieces offensively. When you're talking about defensively, a lot of experience, a lot of really good young talent going to mix together, as well as some transfers. That's maybe the side of the ball I have a little bit of some questions about, but Jay Norvell, a very good head coach. I think he's going to get Colorado State right and have them be competitive in the Mountain West this season. I think Washington State just edges them out. I think especially when you consider this running back room, I do think they're going to be able to give Colorado State some problems up front. And ultimately, I think that is what will seal that one right there. First bye week is before this game against Ole Miss. Tell you what I think here after this water break. Remember to stay hydrated. It is your second Power 4 team of the season, followed by your third in the Virginia Cavaliers. And I think you lose both of those on the road. Ole Miss is a little bit of an easier one to see. Austin Simmons going to be a phenomenal quarterback, and Ole Miss is one of the most talented offensive teams in the country. For a team that really needs to improve the defensive side of the ball a ton from what it was last season, I don't think they're going to be able to keep up with the way Ole Miss likes to run their offense. And then on the road at Virginia, I already told you I think they lose this one, so I'll flash the red up on screen. But why do I think they lose this one? Well, Virginia is a team to me that is so close to being able to, okay, this is the year they break through. Okay, this is the year they break through. Okay, this is the year they break through, and it hasn't happened yet. This is another one of those seasons where you're saying, okay, Virginia, right now, this is the year they can finally break through. You are losing Anthony Calandri at the quarterback position, but bringing in Chandler Morris very well could prove to be an upgrade for this program. And you have a lot of good wide receiver pieces. You have some good running back pieces, especially Jamari Taylor, who's transferring in to pair with Xavier Brown. You are getting a ton of defensive talent back, as well as some really, really good defensive transfers. Mitchell Melton being one of them from Ohio State. He might have even gone somewhere else. Nope, he is just transferring from the Scarlet and Gray. And Virginia, I think, has got a lot of nice talent on it. And I do think Tony Elliott is a pretty serviceable head coach that I think is going to get the job done in ways this year. Again, that question of if they can emerge into the bowl game is going to be the big overarching theme for Virginia this season. But I do think they got some nice talent, and I think they can take it to a Washington State team that's going to have their moments this year where things just aren't quite clicking in year one of Jimmy Rogers. And you very well could see that play through in this game against Toledo. However, I do think you win this game. Now, I'd watch out for Toledo. They are going to be one of the most, if not the most, talented team in the Mid-American Conference. Tucker Gleason is amazing at the quarterback position, and Junior Vandeross is a wide receiver that can really torture this Washington State secondary. However, I do believe Washington State's got enough offensive pieces of their own to be able to match Toledo, and with this one being in Pullman, I give Washington State the slight edge on their home field advantage. You will notice that they have Oregon State twice on the schedule. That is not a typo. That is not an error. That is the way the schedule is set out. So I am going to preview the first game, or I should say, to avoid repeating myself, I'll talk about the team once here. So when you talk about Oregon State, they were pretty beat up defensively last year, and it felt like a disappointment under their head coach, Trent Bray. This year should be a lot better, especially at the quarterback position when they bring in Malik Murphy, who has some proven experience now after a really good season with the Duke Blue Devils. Lots of good wide receiver pieces come back. Top two, or I should say two of your top three running backs return. Tons of good defensive pieces. And with this one being on the road in Corvallis, I do think this one is going to be a win for the Oregon State Beavers. Come back to it, though. At home against Louisiana Tech should be a pretty simple win. It's put up or shut up time time for Sonny Kumbi. He's got to perform this season. And then you get this one on the road against James Madison. Now, James Madison's still going to be one of the better group of 5 teams this season. Bob Chesney's going to enter year 2 within this program. Matthew Saluka is probably going to end up being your starting quarterback, but you also do have Camden Coleman that comes into the room as well. You have an entirely rebuilt wide receiver room that I love what you did there through the transfer portal. Some really good defensive pieces and a culture that is found in winning. I think they're going to give some really, really rough times to this Washington State team, especially defensively, which is where they got to make their improvements this season. And then Oregon State for the second time. And I just see these two teams splitting these two games. Oregon State was able to win last year, so it really wouldn't shock me if Oregon State went into Pullman and was able to pull off a sweep, because I definitely think they're going to win in Corvallis. So it wouldn't shock me to see them pull off the sweep, but I do think Washington State gets them once this season, and that pushes me to a record of 7-5. Hey, a lot better what the odds makers are telling you there. 9-3 to 3-9 is where I sort of see this team, because if things don't click, it could go really south. But if things click well and Eli Eckhouse is the same version of himself that we saw a small sample of last year, especially that at Bryant, and everything fits in well, I'd watch out, man, and give Washington State some time. I think Jimmy Rogers is a great fit for this program long term. That's it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below, and remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See y'all in the next video. Goodbye.